All right. All right. So, hello, everyone, and welcome to another expert session number 120. So, before I start, I want to say thanks to our sponsor, Acclaim AI. Acclaim helps enterprises deploy AI agents into regulated environments where compliance, governance, and execution matter. As AI compresses decision cycles, one capability is becoming even more valuable: leadership. Technology can accelerate decisions, but it cannot replace the context required to make them. That is why conversations like today's matter. So, what is Evolve? Evolve is a global private network connecting senior operators, advisors, founders, investors, and growth companies. Our sessions are designed to surface operational realities before they become obvious. And we bring together executives who actually carried the P&L, built organizations across markets, and made decisions when the outcome was uncertain. So less theory and more operating experience. And our expert today, Håkan Sundström. For more than 20 years, Håkan has been building businesses across Asia, Pacific, and Europe. He has led commercial organizations, regional expansions, global operations, analytics, HR transformations, and full P&L businesses across financial services, SaaS, and professional services. Throughout his career, he has built and scaled regional organizations across APAC, led teams of more than 400 people across 8 countries, opened new markets, including Australia and India, led commercial organizations through a period of rapid growth and transformation, played a key leadership role during Dealogics acquisition by ION, helping navigate one of the most complex moments in the company's history. And today, he advises senior executives across Asia on leadership, execution, and organizational performance. Very few executives have spent this much time operating across countries, cultures, functions, and business cycles. So for context, everyone talks about international expansion. Few people talk about what expansion actually does to leadership. According to McKinsey, more than 70% of organizational transformations fail to achieve their objectives, largely because organizations underestimate leadership alignment, culture, and execution rather than strategy itself. Harvard Business Review has repeatedly shown that cross-border leadership failures rarely stem from technical capability. They emerge from communication, incentives, decision-making, and local context. Bloomberg's reporting on multinational organizations increasingly points to another challenge. Global companies are becoming more centralized at exactly the moment local markets require more autonomy. That creates tension. Headquarters optimize for consistency, markets optimize for reality. Someone has to translate between the two. That someone is usually the country leader. So my opening question, Håkan, for you is, companies spend millions translating products. Almost nobody invests enough in translating leadership. Is international expansion mostly a market challenge, or is it actually a leadership translation problem?
Well, thanks, Carlos. I guess the answer is both, but to your point, there's a lot of time and money spent investing in the product, in the market strategy. The leadership portion tends to come as the second part. And that's what we found with in the reports that I've been working on as well, is that most of the leaders in these regions, in these countries, a very big part of the role is it becomes a translating role. Translating what headquarters are saying and translating what the country or region is actually saying back into the head office. The problem with that is that it's so easy to break the trust between the two. And that's where I've seen it's often falling down. There is no trust. The numbers might take longer because you're in Asia. There's an explanation, but there's not a belief because there's not a trust there. And that's what I've seen in my experience as being a big issue for the people on the ground. And it's being repeated across sectors as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. So let's start there. And there's a movie I always talk about that movie. I don't really remember the name of the movie now, but it's about a guy who's he's an officer. He's a top officer for the U.S. Army, and all of a sudden they're fighting. I don't remember. They're in a combat in I don't know if it's Syria or Pakistan, and then Jake Gyllenhaal, that's
Okay.
the actor. And then there's this Danish guy who's a very famous actor also. They have to have these interpreters, right? Working with them, and the soldier, they are having a discussion and say, "Hey, I hired you to be my translator," and he says, "No, you hired me to be your interpreter, because there are things that gets lost in translation." And I think, I've been working across cultures, and the way people in Denmark they operate is very different. They operate in Brazil. Sometimes in Brazil, people are like, "Yeah, it's amazing," but they're not telling the story behind the story. It's all bollocks, so you never get to understand what they mean about the yes, and let's do it, but nothing is going to get done. So I think that's really interesting when it comes to international expansion. So for you, when headquarters say execute, what are they usually missing on a international expansion? What gets lost in translation?
A few things comes to mind. The first thing, when you get to order, were you in the meeting when the strategy was decided? Most often not. You are a second. You come in the second wave, so you're being given a strategy. You then need to translate that to your region. So if you're in APAC, how you explain that to your team in Japan compared to how you explain it in Indonesia will be different. Another difference is then, if you actually, in Japan, we take that as an example, if you spend the time and actually explain to your team, these are the processes, they can ask their questions, everybody gets clarity, you will get up, once you get up and running, you will be able to move fast. But from a head office perspective, you're taking way too long to start to execute. But you need that time to get it right. So it's a constant battle between the two of, I've been told we need to go and do this. Okay, I need to get my team to understand, the why we're doing this, how we're doing, what's the mechanics. But once you do that, a region in APAC can actually move a lot faster. But it is that part of going slow in the beginning to go fast. While if you, for example, have an American company who's pushing something, they're much more comfortable with, let's go fast, let's break some stuff, and we'll get there. While in other countries, that idea doesn't work. And to your point, if you can be in any meeting in China and everybody says yes, great, we're going to do this. But was the right person in the room? Do we know who the right person is to actually move this forward? So those things are really key to have a clarity on from the beginning. And a lot of that falls on the regional head, but I think depending on how big the revenue is in your region or in your country, yes, if it is 2-3% of the total revenue of the company, you're not going to be in the big meeting. But if you're a European company and you have the US or the Americas and Asia, are they part of that before you roll it out? And I think that's rarely happens, or it doesn't happen as much as I would say it needs to be successful in those positions.
Yeah, so if perhaps we could take a level down and have some practical examples, and I like Dalia also to jump in, because like I've been discussing doing a meetup in Egypt, and the common thing that I heard from most people in Egypt is that we would have to do something fancy because optics matter. Like I heard this from multiple members, like, if we have to do it, we have to do it in a Four Seasons hotel. And I'm like, I'm the outsider, but I'm like, why? Why can we do in maybe a Michelin small restaurant, but why does, but I need to be humble and say, they are saying what's important. I mean, I'm the outsider, So Dalia, do you see that these things that I just shared, like from my perspective, they are like, and based on your experience operating in Germany, operating with the Saudis and Egyptians, how do you see that? And perhaps you also have a question to Hakan, because he's based in Asia, and I think in Asia the trust and things are maybe, I heard, slower pace. They need to understand you more, and it takes more time. So I find this fascinating, but sometimes it's really, really tough.
Well, let me comment first on the Egypt thing. Okay, a glamorous kickoff with the Four Seasons thingy, whatever, yeah, that can do. But also, I think at that time we were discussing more the kind of audience, because they're supposed to be the niche. So if it's a smaller forum, but it has good food and good coffee, I can tell you that they would be happy, because it's all about the quality of content and particularly who is inviting the session. So that's one part that I would comment on. I can definitely relate to what Hakan was saying. I mean, I'm just writing notes, and I have seen it firsthand, whether me personally or other leadership, where we were entering new markets and we really, hit the wall bad. I think that person who comes in with the new plan kind of to the new market, and the GM of that market, even though he's part of the global leadership team, blah, 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 he has to have a say and a buy-in to start with. And then his team going cascading now. So we're looking at a manufacturing director, supply chain, marketing, blah, blah, blah. With marketing and brands particularly, it's not a big issue, because, I mean, I was working with global brands. So you're not going to change Oreo, for example, or Cadbury Dairy Milk and how it's, but the activation, as in the advertising, it has to be local, but that's, a minor discussion. But I think that person who comes in and introduces the new plan kind of needs to have time, which is something that you have mentioned. I mean, headquarters does not understand this, but there's a huge cultural barrier. There's a huge barrier, particularly if they don't understand why we're doing this launch. Why? And they're also, particularly in manufacturing, not in technology, when you have to, maybe pose manufacturing on a local loved brand, and you have to start manufacturing the global brand that is being, thrown in the market. For example, there will always be these tensions. So that person needs to have time, negotiation skills, and a lot of flexibility that he or she would be given from headquarters. Okay, so I can tell you a simple example in my Mondelez days, when I was in regional, not global even. So my market is EMEA, so from Russia to South Africa, specifically chocolate. I was coming in to the Russian team with a new plan that they have to pay for from their local budget. So the first day in the meeting, I mean, we've been, it was the first time we meet in person, but we've been on email. And the guys, honestly, I mean, I'd like to be politically correct when I say this, but I felt that they're treating me as a spy. literally. I mean, I was walking into a movie and I was like, guys, this is the office of Mondelez. I mean, I'm with you guys. Anyway, I was just listening. Honestly, I was just trying to absorb what the hell is going on. I already knew that there are certain projects they don't want to do, or they don't want to do it that
Mhm.
way, and they are paying for it. So I'm coming from the outside and I'm telling them, guys, you got to do this and you got to pay for it. So the guests, they took me out to dinner, and after like a few bottles of vodka, the following morning, I was in the office and everything was chilled and cool. And we have a dialogue. There was flexibility. They had some really very insightful comments, which I didn't know. Some sort of logistics with regards to allocation of budgets and talent and agencies, blah, 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 which I totally understood one on one. And I went back to my boss and told them, listen, we have to have an update on the plan because this. And on the other hand, there are a couple of projects that they said, okay, we'll do it for you. So this dialogue would have never happened if I hadn't listened. And also I had a flexible mentality, and I did have that dialogue with them. So in a lot of cases, if you think about it, it's like selling a product to a customer or consumer. They need to understand what's in it for me, okay? And there is flexibility between me and the other people, that we're on the same side. It's not okay, there's negotiation, but we're not enemies here. And to your earlier point, again, as well, if they are small, and as a BU, they would not have a say. So at the end of the day, they need to understand it's because they're big, they're important to the global company. Therefore, they have a say, they have a seat on the table, and it all went well at that time. But for me, I have to say this was a huge growth opportunity for me as a person and as a manager, and later as an executive, of how to manage and culture stuff. And if we're talking about, I've worked in India, Brazil, South, I mean, in depth. And if you think that the headquarters is Switzerland with the Swiss mentality, and I'm Egyptian, so it's like, this is completely crazy, but all good. So currently in my consultancy role, I'm happy to demonstrate that I can understand where people are coming from. And listening is very important. I have to tell you, because sometimes we come into the meeting with an agenda. We just want to enforce, this is 1, 2, 3. No, listen, because in a lot of cases, they just want to be heard, by the way. If you just tell them at the end, it is what it is, they might accept it.
And that's been my experience as well. They want to be heard. They don't need to be changing the whole plan, but they want to be heard. They want to have their say, and then we can move on. But you need to take your time to do so. And I think that's what I've seen with a lot of companies, that here's the plan, here's what we're doing, and that might work in certain locations. If everybody have agreed here in Sweden, they will go on and do it. But if you go to Greece, where I was working last year, they need to first understand, I need to explain my reasoning or our reasoning. They need to say their thing, and then we can move on. And to your point, it doesn't have to be a lot of changes, but that portion needs to be there before you can move forward.
Hakan, do you have an example of a situation that you could share? Dalia spoke about the chocolate, the chocolate example that she went through and she lived. But in your days in Asia, in the professional services company that you were building there, or you had such an interesting experience. So perhaps you could share like a practical situation.
Yeah, I think, well, where to start in a way. India is nothing like the rest of the region. Not meant in a good or bad way. It's just different. And I think where you really need to go in and be very clear in your communication of what you want. And having that with when you're building a new business, I've, you know, I've been fortunate that I've been able to build businesses from the ground up. So I haven't been able, very few times I've gone in and acquired a lot of people from there. But if we looked at, well, if we take the example from more recently, where we moved our office from Düsseldorf to Athens in the professional services company. And I think that was a culture shock for both the people in Athens and the overall American company, that we were able to find great people. We were able, but it's a different way of operating. They're as fast, they can do the job as well. But if you, yet again, if you don't explain to them what's going on, they almost feel like you don't care. And that feeling of, I actually care of what you do as a group is really important. It's been a long time since I worked in Sweden, so I don't know if we have that in Scandinavia. I don't think there is the same thing, same feeling if you work in the US, for example. But in Athens, and definitely also in, you know, in Singapore or in Tokyo and Seoul, they want to feel like they matter. It doesn't matter that they're not the biggest part of the revenue, but that they are being heard, and that the head office or the overall executive team actually notice them has become really, really important. And I think it's becoming even more important in the age of AI, that the people who are actually there and the people who are doing these tasks, or they're being asked to add more and more value, that they're being seen. And it sounds like such almost a banal thing to say, but I think it's really, really important that to have those conversations and invest that little bit of extra time. And I think that's what worked for us in Athens. And that's really when we started to see the growth in the people, that they started to take more responsibility. They started to take more ownership, because they felt like they had the backing of the people within the organization.
Yeah, I think you know, like Evolve gives us such a rich perspective on the things you're sharing, because it's so interesting when we talk to, just gonna compare an American and a Swede. You're a very international guy, but an American starts talking business, blah, 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 blah. And if there's a chit chat, it stays at the end. Swedish and Danes and Brazilians, you need to, you know, Brazilians, I would say, let's go to the other extreme. We'll speak more, 15 minutes, blah, blah, blah. And then you get down to business. In Sweden and Denmark, maybe 5 minutes, hey, the weather, blah, blah, blah. And then you talk. But it's so interesting, because Gustavo and I, we always have this discussion. So, did you see this guy? Like, or guy, girl. So Americans, they have this business mentality, very aggressive. You know, it's it's how they operate. And I'm not saying that other societies are not capitalist in that sense, but it's just understanding that, you know. And it's very, very interesting. So there's my wife. She's operating Lais now with the Irish, right? Lais, she's at the gym. Good to see you. Yeah, it's really interesting, because she is now with the Irish, and she has to translate the Irish culture to the Danish people, you know, and she's Brazilian. So that's very interesting in my opinion, you know. So those things are challenging, but at the same time fascinating. So when it comes to international expansion, you know, you have hired people, opened offices, generated pipeline, you've done it all. So what usually breaks, Hakan, maybe we're going to repeat ourselves here, but in your opinion, what breaks first, you know, in a international expansion?
From a leadership perspective, what shows up first is pressure, that people are starting to feel more and more pressure. I think that's just a symptom, yeah. That just the symptom of a lack of trust across the organization. And the trust goes both ways. Is the head office hearing what we're saying? Or is the region, the country, actually hearing what we're saying from the headquarters? And my experience and the experience of a lot of people that I have talked to recently is that if we don't have that trust built in, that I know the people that I need to connect with, that I've spent actual time with them in the same room, that's when it starts to break down. COVID was a great time for a lot of companies to grow, especially more the technology and the professional services industry grew a lot. But I think it hurt a lot of longer term growth in terms of people didn't see each other face to face. We didn't send people to New York, or we didn't send people to Paris to spend time with the people on actual headquarters. And I think that's something that we're seeing less and less of. We send people on a 2-week trip to, you know, Vienna or Sao Paulo, but sending somebody there for 6 months or 2 years, that's how you actually cross-build that understanding and the trust between the people. And I know I'm repeating myself in terms of saying how important that connectivity is. Ultimately, we need to deliver numbers, and we all live and die by numbers. But before we get there, and you know, that investment in there, and I was talking to somebody who works at Bloomberg, and Bloomberg is a massive organization, but they have the thing of, if you are looking to become a global leader of a segment, you actually have to spend time in the other 2 major regions, so APAC, EMEA. So if you're from the US, you need to spend time in EMEA and APAC before you actually get the opportunity to step in there. And I think that is a great way. Most companies can't afford that. That's a, you know, Bloomberg's a massive organization, but it's one of the few organizations that I've actually heard who's actually implemented that. I'm sure a lot of the big multinationals do similar things, but an SME to a mid-cap might not be able to afford that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
Can I jump?
yeah, go ahead.
For
Yes,
here?
please.
I think for cost reasons at this point in time, it's not going to be viable, even though I totally agree with you. And what made it even worse is COVID, because we got used to all of these Zoom thingies, which I totally hate. I always like, you know, face-to-face conversations. You know, you need to feel the person and read their body language and perhaps have a drink or something. It really makes a difference. I can tell you that. And over the years, okay, we did not really, I mean, I'm talking about my Mondelez days. We did not really, you know, spend months and months, but we had very critical workshops, which I ran actually as a strategy person. So we get the lead people from each of our regions, and there's a certain topic. So we had war games against Mars, for example, Platís in biscuit. We had the relaunch of the biscuit portfolio in Algeria and Lebanon and all of that. But there is a sequence, so they have lots of homework to do before they come in. There is structure, 2 days, and not very heavy work. So just half a day we're working, and the other half we're playing together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but I think it really broke the dams. Currently, this does not really happen a lot, again, because organizations want to keep their margins, and this is huge cost to get all of these people in. I hope they continue to do so. So that's one thing. The other practice I have seen, again, in my company and others, where they have actually a division only for international expansion. So these people are handpicked with an international kind of mindset. They are good communicator, because this is very important. They should not be leaks of rumors or whatever from indirect, and cross-functional. But these people, so in Mondelez, for example, the duty free, and particularly I worked on Toblerone. So there was a function completely separate from the company called duty free, just to activate chocolate and candies and whatever in airports, because this is very, very unique setup. For example, yeah, you could enter markets, whatever the portfolio or services that you're doing. If this team is in place and really understand the market, it could actually have some of the local people as well. So it's a mix, because cultures do matter. I cannot stress this enough. I mean, I know people would say, like, culture eats strategy and all of that, but I mean, I have hands-on experience on every function on that, not only leadership. Yeah. So, and I've seen personally some of my ex-bosses, they were just amazing in their numbers and, how they managed, but they were poor leaders because they could not embrace the new markets that they came in. So the easy thing is always, do a restructuring, get rid of the GM, get your buddy to handle, whatever. Yeah. See what I mean? This is usually how multinational works. And to me, I don't actually enjoy working with multinationals. I enjoy big local corporations that need that, little tick and twist of the multinationals to grow to that next level. They always have this passion about the country and how they want to create new jobs. This is the type of companies that I would be attracted to support and grow into markets, because today it's much, much easier, especially with all the digital stuff that is happening, and consumers and customers are ready to embrace. You don't have to really explain a lot about the technology. It's already there, and trends are just, booming all over.
Yeah, I agree. And having that, to your point, on the non-multinationals, to do that little tweak, because there are so many of them that are on the cusp of becoming much larger or going into certain regions or countries. But there is a misunderstanding of what worked here is going to work everywhere. That's true to 85%, but that last 15% of tweaking that you need to do is the most important part.
Is there a moment where headquarters should say no to local adaptation, in your experience, that made sense? Or
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that should be standardized. It should be done the same, and down to the thing, maybe how you talk about your specific product, but not out of a marketing perspective, but just more, what are we actually trying to build with this? What is our service and all of that? And that's what I mean. It's not a big change that needs to happen. Maybe in manufacturing, which maybe I'm not as familiar with, but there needs to be a global culture. There needs to be a thing that I understand. If I'm working for this company, whether I'm in Hong Kong, Sao Paulo, or Oslo, my understanding of the company is the same. So that's the basis of it. And I think that's really important. But then you need to be able to have that flexibility of, this is the difference. And if we take a simple example, if you're a big European company out of Paris, you're not going to have any problem recruiting for that people. You will find the greatest talent. You will find from the best schools. You then open an office in Seoul. I don't know how many people are in Seoul, 20 million probably in Seoul.
Mhm.
And you have a 50 people office. People don't know your company. People don't see that maybe the value of the company. So how you place yourself in the market, what you're talking about, how you talk about it to your employees will be different. And I think that is a thing that a lot of people forget about, that just because I'm big over here doesn't mean it means anything in another location. So
Mhm.
it's finding that balance to play between those. I think that's one of my big takeaways, which I didn't really understand in the beginning. Okay, I work for this company, we're X amount in terms of revenue. If you're in
Mhm.
this space, you'll know us. Well, not necessarily,
Mhm. Mhm.
because there might be a
So,
local competitor who's much more well known.
yeah, for sure. And you see, I think what you're saying is, I'm going to bring my perspective, building evolve. Like we have in the beginning, for multiple reasons, we decided to go with WhatsApp, and we've been challenged, especially by people in the Nordics, saying, "This is not going to work. I don't use WhatsApp," but it's their perspective.
Mhm.
And what I realized is that once people start understanding what's in for them, and then like it was very important comment there by Dalia, um, you know, then they may not comment, but they observe what's happening. So our churn is very low. Like, like people are not necessarily leaving WhatsApp anymore uh, because they're seeing that relevant people are joining the group, there are relevant conversations. And so I think we we are building something quite interesting, but there was a lot of uh, skepticism, if you like, from some people saying, "Hey, this is not going to work because we've done things this way, and in the Nordics we use messengers and whatnot." And so there's also I think when it comes to global expansion and what you're saying, back to your point, and using Evolve as an example, like uh, consistency, showing up, having your solid rituals. Like we have our digital event here every Thursday. Every Thursday, 6 p.m. Central European time, we have our event. Our challenge is then, okay, we need to have our local events, in-person events. That's a completely different beast, like have the engine running. Um, but that's really interesting, and I like to hear from you both, like in terms of rituals, what do you think you can do when you have a global company? Because you need to have your local rituals, but also, as you're saying, right, the global ethos, that people understand what they represent and who they're working for, and does it make sense?
It does. Um, your WhatsApp comment made me just think of implementation as well.
Mhm.
In one of the companies that I worked with, we did a lot of very fast communication with our clients, and our systems was built to send out text messages because that
Mhm.
worked in the US. In Asia, it was WhatsApp
Mhm.
or some of the local providers in China. You have your local, and you needed to do all your communications on those platforms. And if you
Mhm.
didn't, nobody would talk to you, because nobody,
Mhm.
they'll think that they were getting something from the government if they got a text message, which they didn't want to look at. So that adaptation is super important. Um, to go back to your point in terms of how do you, so let me understand your question correctly here. How do you adapt to a global approach? Is that what you mean?
Mhm.
Or Is that correct?
That's kind of like it. So how do you create maybe your rituals like at a global level, and then eventually at a local level? I think at a local level you will need some adaptation, because that's what we've been discussing, and hence why local teams, they will need to do things their way. But at a global level, I think you need to have certain rituals that people understand, like, in our case, every Thursday we have our thing here. Every Thursday, whether I'm in Brazil, Gustavo's in Berlin. Next week we can't run this, but we're gonna have members running on our behalf now. So it's something that, things are happening, and I'm very happy about it, because the engine works. Like if I activate my network and people are interested in what we do, they say, okay, I like to represent Evolve. We can host the expert session. So that's running, and that is not failing. So at this global level, I think it works. In my opinion, in our case, at the local level is much harder, because we need to have especially when you're self-funded, like we don't have investors.
Yeah.
So. But the question is more like the importance of rituals, and if you have any, let's say, suggestions, and the experience you had running rituals to make this happen at the global level and at the local level.
Yeah, and part of that comes back to what Delia was saying about rumors and killing off all of these things. Yeah, so you need to have a very clear idea of what the identity, and it needs to be communicated constantly. And I think with a lot of the SMEs that I work with, that's really easy when you're 50 people and you might sit in 2 offices over 2 countries. But once you hit critical mass and you become there, those rituals actually becomes key of having a clear cadence, having a clear way of communicating. And I don't, there's very good examples of this and very bad examples of this, but spreading the word and then having people who can actually travel and show up and actually take the time, I think, is a key aspect. Yet again, we're not doing that as much now because of costs and all of that, but technology is there to help you. And I'm maybe old-fashioned, but I still believe that office drinks and that office coffees are super important, both on a global and a local level, and really make an effort of being communicated clearly on that. I'm not sure I'm giving you a really good answer on your question. Because it becomes a little bit abstract on how you actually think about it. But I think if you're not pushing your identity, who are you? Are you just satellite offices or different companies? Then I don't know if you have a different answer to that question.
Yeah, go ahead. Go, Dalia.
Okay. I don't actually have rituals per se. I mean, as a consultant, I'm very flexible in terms of how I handle each client, because they come with different, portfolio. But what I can tell you is consistent is the way I build my personal brand, because as a consultant, this is who I am. I have a company and everything, but people know me by name, and they would company say, we want Dalia for that project. Yeah. So whatever I'm building in terms of comments on LinkedIn or whatever, people have a consistent, feedback on what I can do and who I am. And even as, a personality. I mean, when I introduced myself, I told you I'm into rock concerts and traveling and whatever. And my Lulu, the cat, remember her, my cat. I mean, she hates it when I'm on my laptop and don't give her attention. So yeah, she's part of the portfolio now. I've had her for 2 years. So that's me.
Identity. in the end, I think it comes down to your identity. That's you summarized it in a great way. Gustavo, go ahead, please.
Yeah, around this topic the other day, I saw a very interesting. It was a lot more like it wasn't a podcast, but it was like a long interview from a company that it's from a huge Brazilian group of payment solutions, and they are starting a new company here in Europe. So their headquarters, let's say, is in London, but they have offices in, I think it was something like 8 or 10 countries here in Europe, and a good time of this interview, let's say, the CEO of the company was saying about culture and how to build that culture across these offices and etc. And he was telling exactly like that. So he said, oh, well, we have the culture of the company that we want the whole company to have, but we need to be mindful, and we need to respect each location that we have, each country that we have our offices and our clients and the people that work there, because mostly they are from the location. So he was saying, so if we have they were in London and they have like offices in Czechia and in Poland and in other regions. So he was saying, so for these offices, for an example, for all the offices, the official language is the language of the country. So we keep them in their language, in their culture, and etc. If they need to talk to us, of course, we'll speak in English. But we keep the language there. So what's the culture of that region, of that country, of that region? So do they have more forgot to say home office, or do they have less home office and etc. So he was saying we adapt that. Of course, we have the culture of the company, but they were explaining that they were trying to bring that culture to localize the culture of the company and to adapt as soon as they could. And yes, that's interesting. And another thing that I've seen, and I think Hakan touched a point around that, and I think Dalia also. It's interesting how many companies, when they expand abroad, they just like their offices is basically like a mimic of their official headquarters in the other locations. And then when you enter the offices, it's a strange because this doesn't look like the culture I'm in the country, or the culture I live in, etc. And you feel like, oh yeah, this is something different. I think that's also another thing that some companies also need to think about, right? So they need to as Carlos pointed, they need to localize. They need to try to bring the culture from the company, but the locations, they need also to have their independence, right? They need to behave like they are in their daily lives, because that's why also I think that's why also you're going there. So because of how that economy and that country and that region works.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, two very different approaches. I think my experience have probably been more with the second version, where even the offices look the same wherever you go. And I think that's really that's what worked, what I have seen working. I think the other model is very interesting, but I think it's really, really it requires a very strong parent company to be able to handle that. And if you can make that happen, if there are wholly owned subsidiaries and all, but you still almost operate separately, I think that's great. But that requires actually quite a lot from head office in terms of trust and belief as well.
Brilliant. I think we could touch AI. Perhaps let's try to bring some substance, because I have a problem when we just speak about AI for the sake of AI. But yeah, we're seeing people being laid off, and the great narrative why you should lay off people these days, which I'm against, by the way. And so, but I think we are heading into a world, and that's where part of our bet, Uni Evolve, is we have a club of exceptional people like yourself, like Dalia, Amir. You build stuff, right? So senior advisors, so people who are now they're typically at a place where they can choose what they want to do. They don't want all the politics anymore of working for a multinational, a large company, and we have top advisors in our club. And then you have companies are growing at or they want to become global companies. They want to accelerate. So our role here is to connect these worlds, right? And we believe more. There's going to be a scenario where larger companies are going to, because of AI. I think there's going to be the management layer is going to be smaller, for various reasons. That's what I believe. And this is going to cause perhaps more people to either leave companies and they want to pick and choose what to do, or they're going to be laid off. So how do you see a world moving forward, the role of AI, the role of management in the world that we are stepping in? Hakan, what are you seeing? What's the conversations you're having with your customers? We'd love to have your take on that.
Yeah, so it's definitely a talking point wherever you go, of course. I'm sure Amir can attest to that. I don't think we have seen anything of it yet, really, of any scale. I think where I'm seeing it coming through in a way is middle management, first and foremost. And if you look at middle management, what are they doing? If it is just collecting and packaging and passing it up and passing it back down, yeah, those roles are becoming much more clear. And what they are doing, if they're focusing on that, that's becoming visible. But what is left is judgment. It's deciding what matters and holding, showing people where to go when things becomes unclear. And I think those roles are actually becoming more important. But there is a distinction between the two. So talking about APAC, I've seen less of it than I have done in Europe. I think Europe is, both regions are racing towards it, but in terms of an effect on it, I'm seeing more of it in Europe than I have done in APAC so far. That people are more willing to go into it. But I think that's the distinction that's going to happen first. What is the value that you're actually producing? And I don't know if Amir, you agree with that in terms of where we are in that cycle, but it is initially was everybody, okay, now everything's going to change, but now I think it is becoming more focused on value add in terms of that.
Yeah. And I think much of the narrative right now in terms of reducing cost, laying off people is, let's say, more a welcome narrative in terms of we have to make some corrections in our current, let's say, business strategy, but actually proof of productivity gains or cost reduction through AI, in the, let's say, in the regions of, let's say, 3 to, if it's very high, 10% right now. So these narratives you see laying off a lot of people, I think.
You're on mute, Amir. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry.
You were mute.
Yeah. Some of these narratives may be true. There may be layoffs because of AI. I think some of them are more like, let's say, good PR or marketing narratives. And if we take a look at companies, what they need right now, most of them, and we work for, let's say, most of our clients are very traditional companies, reaching from Siemens to big retail companies in Austria. They're more on the traditional side. But most of our companies and most of the companies right now are going through a transition phase. And as you said, Hakan, I think what is especially needed is real leadership in terms of giving orientation, what is success critical right now. And this is something we see where you see real leadership and not just management. Because I think just management, as it was or is understood in some companies, that can be replaced. It will take a time, but it can be replaced. And right now, I think that the main challenge is how to apply real leadership in this transformation era. Because if you don't have these people that give orientation, what is success critical, what can be, for example, automated, what can be done by AI, and what has to be judged, decided, and done by people, and where do we need to connect real people, this has to be decided by people, and these people, in most cases, as I have experienced it, have let's say some real expertise or some real experience in terms of real leadership, as I understand it, in terms of giving orientation and being able, let's say, preparing the right decisions or making the right decisions.
And,
Go, Amir.
and if I may,
Yeah.
and if I may add, Amir, you know, this reminds me of the book, you know, Thinking Fast and Slow, because if you're in global expansion, not every BU at the same phase because of the culture, you know, and there are countries that are labor intensive. What are you going to do? Like tell them, no, we're going to fire you because we're going to get a robot to do the manufacturing work for you. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I think it's a bigger picture for AI and how you use it. And the way I see it, it's definitely efficiency, absolutely. But where to invest, and that's a leadership question. in my line of work, I can tell you it clashes with creativity and advertising. And there has been a lot of discussions in the recent Cannes Lions conference, which is, for people who don't know, it's like the top conference for advertising and creative people in the world. Yeah, and if you're talking creativity as new kind of newness, AI is not going to help you. It is positioned more as collaborator. It's like a friend that you're brainstorming with a creative idea. It's certainly a lot of efficiencies in production, print, for example, or whatever, that kind of thing. But creativity, as the book says, it will not. It's a collaborator. So I think, and I'm being a bit harsh on my own region and Egypt specifically, because I've worked with agencies and very big names, and they're really very lazy. I mean, I see it, when you put these images with ChatGPT or whatever, I mean, the people, they look at the eyes. It is AI. This is not a person, so what are you doing? It's, all the neuromarketing work says that it does not work. We are not stupid as human beings. So why do you treat customers like this? So that's at least on AI in my industry, but great discussion. I love that. Aspect on the total leadership. And I pity some of the leaders who have to have, as a mundane, you have to invest in AI. How do they make that decision, and how much and in which function? Because we don't actually know the outcome.
I think that's a really valid point. That a lot of people are putting a lot of money into AI, but what are you actually doing with it? Are we fixing so from my sectors, are we fixing the technology problems that we're having, or are we trying to solve our sales process? So I think there's a lot of things that, because of the speed of this, that everybody's afraid to get left behind. So we want to invent new things, while actually we should be fixing some of the things that's already broken. But that requires decision making. That requires understanding what is important for our organization right now. And yeah, you can change all your plumbing, but if nobody knows where that plumbing is going to go, then it's not going to work.
Yeah, and just in the news today, OpenAI, they had a hack. So I'm like, what the hell is going on? And this whole discussion about, energy consumption, nobody really knows where to invest, and tons of money are being put in it.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
and
Go ahead.
Just one point there. I think many people say, okay, we must invest in AI. It's more like this FOMO state, this fear of missing out. And some of the people really don't know if they just want to optimize and cut costs and go for efficiency, or if they are really ready to reinvent some of their processes, products, way of working. And these are completely different states of mind. You need completely different states of culture in your organization. And you for reinvention, you need some kind of entrepreneurial spirit and mindset. And I haven't seen this kind of spirit in any larger organization, because they are not made for reinvention. They are made as let's say, a well-oiled machine. Optimization is possible, but even if we talk just about optimization, I observe many conversations that have no clear outcome, no clear value, hope, or direction, how AI or the adoption of AI could improve anything in their business. And I think this discussion will become more popular the next month, because it doesn't show up in the P&L all these investments, and people will get nervous about it. And I think that's a good thing to do.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you, Dalia. We have to close the session, Hakan. So I have one final question. So complete this sentence. The organizations that will outperform over the next decade are the ones that?
Provide clarity of where the organizations are heading to the people who are still in the organization.
Brilliant. It's a great ending. So this was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. Hakan, if people want to know more about you, like I can always promote you within the community, but we're gonna promote you outside of the community as well. What's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, it's LinkedIn first and foremost. I would say is probably where I spend way too much of my time. And otherwise, it's on my website, which is kinmorasolutions.com.
Sure thing. So thank you all. I also encourage you all to connect on LinkedIn if you like some time here to exchange notes or exchange LinkedIn links, or otherwise you can do that in the community. So thank you all. Thank you, Hakan. Thank you, Dalia. Thank you,
Thank
Amir.
you, guys.
Great discussion.
All right. Great to meet
Thank you
you.
all.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.